Hello and welcome to another video. It has been a while to say the least. I cut my hair, dyed it pink, let it grow, quit my job, got a new job. I sewed an 1830s top, liked it so much I sewed another 1830s top, finally did the skirt for the first 1830s top to kind of do a dress like matching ensemble thing. Sewed my friend a skirt, sewed another friend a shirt, and then sewed myself a dress for one friend's wedding, sewed another dress for another friend's wedding, and literally more than a year later I am back with another video, finally. So this one is like a 14th century like kind of Italian Renaissance dress. That's the vibe. I normally make a dress for the Abbey Medieval Festival, which I go to every year, but obviously with the situation of the current situation, that was like postponed this year. Well, it was postponed last year as well and this year, so that's a real shame and I'm really sad. But I did still make a dress. Well, actually it wasn't postponed until like a couple of days before, so I was planning on attending with wearing this dress. But anyway, yeah, so I decided to make a not quite medieval. I'm pushing it. It's a little bit more Renaissance than it is medieval, but I was watching a lot of the Borgias TV show and I was extremely inspired by the dresses. One in particular, which had a very clever like sleeve attachment situation, which I think is really cool, and I've tried to recreate that here. So yeah, let's get into it. So this dress is worn by Holiday Granger as Lucrezia Borgia, and you can see in that picture it had the sleeves were tied on, they're not actually attached. So I came up with some ideas of how to do that. The first thing I did was to cut out the bodice of the dress out of this gold fabric, and then kind of similar to that the dress from the Borgias, the bodice and the skirt are a slightly different color. Hers was like pink and dark pink. I've gone for like a bit more of a contrasting thing, so a gold bodice and teal for the skirt and like accents. So in addition to cutting out the bodice pattern in the pretty gold fabric, I also cut it out in a lining fabric, so this beige calico that you can see here, and then I did that in two thicknesses as well, so in this one and then another layer as well, which is actually dark green, but that doesn't matter, it's like completely on the inside. And then I've put those lines, like vertical lines you can see, are boning channels where I've put zip ties in, and that gives it some structure, which you can see there. And there's also these buttonholes on the armholes, that's what that is there, and that'll be for the tie-on sleeve situation. So I sewed the lining fabric with the boning channels in it to the pretty gold fabric, and that's done right sides together, so when you flip it out you can't see any of this. When I was making that 1960s orange dress in a different video, the pattern I was using had this technique, which I have used a bunch of times since, and it's really helpful. So fold the lining part at the shoulder straps down like this, so it's not entirely face to face with the pretty fabric, and then you sew that, and then you can sew all of the rest of the lining to the main fabric, and sew around all of the edges, leaving at least one side open so you can flip it through. And the reason you do that is because then when you flip it the right side out, the lining is actually inside the strap, and then you can just sew the gold fabric, like the fashion fabric, together, and it means that the lining is not visible from the outside, and it makes a really neat finish. You do have to hand sew it, but it does look really good. So here you can see I'm turning the lining fabric and the gold fashion fabric pieces that are sewn together right side out. It's kind of like turning like a pillowcase the right way out. And then at the sleeves, the gold fabric, the fashion fabric, extends a little bit further because the lining fabric is actually folded under and is inside those two pieces. So then at this point, you can join the two gold pieces and pin them together and sew them together. And then when you flip it, they're connected and that connects the whole strap. And then you can just hand sew those lining pieces together. Hello.
Hello.
So now the bodice is pretty much done. Well, it was pretty simple, but anyway, it's pretty much done. So now we move on to miles of skirt fabric. So most of it is the blue fabric, and then I wanted to add stripes or like panels of the gold and have those lined or like bordered with this really pretty trim that I'm struggling to cut out. So then I just sewed the gold panels to the blue main fabric, and that's pretty easy. This is what that looks like. It was just literally miles and miles and miles of fabric, so it took a long time. Because then I realized that I wanted the top to be more structurally sturdy, given that there was so much skirt, I cut out some strips out of the very thick denim-y sort of canvas that I used to line the bodice, and then I put them around the waistline. Hello.
Hello.
So distant. One skirt. The next thing to do with all of that skirt fabric was measure equal distances. I think I used 1.5 inches to put some pleats in, and then I stitched them. I hand stitched them with upholstery thread so it's extra strong, so it wouldn't come apart when I wear it, which is important. So hand sewing all of these pleats took a very long time. So I did that whilst I was watching The White Queen on Stan. Has anyone seen it? It started off not great, but I got pretty into it. I wanted to watch the Borgias again since it was very thematic to me making this dress, but it's been taken off, which is really annoying. So anyway, I started watching this. It's about the War of the Roses and like the Lancasters versus the Yorks, and it ended up being pretty good. I liked it by the end of it. What I'm doing here with a tape measure is making sure the very front pleat, which is not a cartridge pleat, it's just a flat pleat, is even. So the rest of the pleats are cartridge pleats, so they're very three-dimensional, and this one was meant to be flat so that the front gold panel in the middle of the dress hung nice and straight and flat. After I had done all of the cartridge pleats and the normal pleats and measured it so that the skirt was then the measurement of the bottom of the bodice, I then just hand stitched it on. So for the hem of the skirt, I wasn't really keen on hand stitching all of that fabric again to hem it, and I didn't think it would look right if I did a machine hem. So what I did is I actually used iron-on hemming tape. It's just kind of like in iron-on fusing webbing, and then you just iron it on and it kind of holds a hem. It's pretty magic. I like it. So I'm realizing now that I do not have pretty much any footage of me making the sleeves for this, except me cutting out the sleeve pattern, which I will show you now. So it's just a normal sleeve pattern, except instead of the cap, the very top of the sleeve being like a rounded dome, I actually cut it so it was kind of like a pointy bit, which you can see at the bottom of this picture. So then instead of sewing in the normal dome bit into the armhole, which you would normally do, I completely left the sleeve detached. So I sewed the side bits to make like the arm tube, and then I put a buttonhole at the top of the little pointy bit and at the sides in like the swoopy bit at the bottom, and then that is what I used with ribbon to attach it to the dress, which you'll see in the final picture. The last thing I did to make the dress very queenly and luxurious was sew on some pearl beads around the neckline, and I added some of the trim not just to the front panels but around the neckline as well, which I don't have any footage of either, but it just is trim on the front. That is what it looks like. I think you can figure it out. definitely see my jeans, can't you?
Uh-huh.